Alright, so I'm literally filming this the same day I filmed my Reflections of 2020 video. I literally just hit the button to turn off the camera and turned it back on. But, I thought I'd go ahead and record the next video for you guys that is car content at least, something that's a little bit more lighthearted from last week's video, from last Friday's 2020 Reflections video. And talk about kind of my favorite cars from each market. If you guys remember the poll I did a couple weeks ago, this was the second place finisher of that poll, outside of the theoretical replacements with the Sport Track, which hopefully I'll have more news on. At the time I'm recording this, of course, it was the previous Thursday when this video goes up, so I don't know anything right now. But I'll keep you guys updated. If anything happens, I'll pop it up on screen here with a little like disclaimer or something like that. I don't know. But today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite cars from each global market. And this was, again, the second place finisher on that poll I did for what you guys wanted to see. And like I said, all three of those videos are coming. Eventually there will be a video on the KDM stuff. But we're starting off with the two top finishers, which were, of course, the theoretical replacements video that you guys have probably already seen by now. If you haven't, go check that out. As well as this video that you guys are watching now. So let's get right into my favorite cars from each global market. Now, I'm separating each by country. So with the USDM, I'm going to be speaking specifically about American cars. Obviously, the USDM is kind of only US cars. JDM will be, of course, Japan. And the problem with Europe is that Europe does have a ton of countries that manufacture cars. You've got Britain, you've got Germany, you've got Sweden, you've got Italy, even Spain. If you live in Europe, you can actually get access to SEAT, which is a Spanish company. You've got, Italy, which I think I already said. You've got a lot of countries in Europe that are able to manufacture cars. So I'll be splitting those up by country and going through my favorite cars from the countries versus my favorite cars from all of Europe. Picking one car for the entirety of Europe, I think, would be just bonkers. So I think we should get right into the fun. Let's get right into it. So we're going to start off with America because that's where I'm from. I think it's probably the best place to start, I guess, for me. Just to kind of, because this channel mostly revolves around domestic cars anyway, I think it's probably the best case scenario to start in the U.S. for me. My favorite U.S. car is honestly a very big toss-up right now because there's a lot of cars I like from America. All over the spectrum. 4-doors of the G8, the Charger, 2-doors of the Challenger, the Camaro, the Mustang, the Corvette, cars like that, and obviously some oddball stuff like what I own. I mean, the Sport Track in particular, the F-150 Lightning, the only two trucks I genuinely really like. Obviously there's a lot of different vehicles around America to pick from. I mean, America's car culture is kind of extravagant. There's lots of cars to pick from. But I think my favorite American car so far is actually the C7ZR1. I think that car just fits every single category well. I mean, it's fast with 750 horsepower. It's got, the handling to back it up. It's got fantastic transmission options. I mean, the 8-speed, a lot of people hate automatics and Corvettes, but I actually think the 8-speed is a really good transmission. I mean, the 7-speed manual as well, that's a fantastic transmission as well. The car is just set up perfectly. It makes a good note. It looks good. It handles well. It moves out of its own way very well. It's got a lot of tuning potential, as we can see with other YouTube channels like Street Sweet 717's fully built C7ZR1. But the C7ZR1 just has a special place in my heart, and I think that if I were going to be able to have any American car for any cost in my driveway, it would more than likely be a C7ZR1. Even though I will say I love the C8. The C8 is great, but I love the C7ZR1 just a bit more. Obviously, second place, I'm not going to have two Chevys in the top 5. It's a battle between the Dodge Challenger Demon and the GT500, the new one. I really like both of those cars, and they both have fantastic setups for transmissions. I mean, sure, neither are offered in a stick, but both of their transmissions are no joke. I mean, the ZF 8-speed has been proven time and time again for how amazing it is, and the 7-speed GT500 DCT transmission is also really good, and I've really come to enjoy those cars. At first, I was one of those. I was like, I don't know, a GT500 without a manual is kind of odd, but they've really made the GT500 go from this big, muscle car kind of drag car status to more of a road course car, and I think that that's an interesting direction to take the GT500 in, knowing its history. The 500 started off as a track car. A lot of people don't realize that. It wasn't a drag queen from the very beginning. It was a track car first. So that's the GT500. I think it's like a battle between those two. I mean, it's a hard decision, but that's kind of the toss up from America. Like all the other countries, I'll be able to pick two cars or one or two cars easy, but with America, it was a very difficult decision because I really like all the American cars so far. Let's go to Japan next, which is kind of obvious. I think a lot of people who know me know my favorite Japanese car is, of course, the Toyota Supra, and this goes for 3 generations of it. I really like the Mark III, Mark IV, and Mark V. I like all 3 of those cars. The Mark IV gets an edge because of nostalgia, and I know the car the best, and I love the 2JZ engine. But the 3 and the 5 are also, strong contenders. But listen, I love all 3 generations. All 3 of the last 3 generations of the Supra. There we go. Obviously, a second place is a battle between the S2000 and NSX, as well as the Evo and the STI, because I just love all those cars, and I think it's really hard for me to pick a favorite between all 4 of those. So I'm kind of putting them all in second place. It wasn't as much a toss-up as America, because obviously the Supra was going to win, but I think picking a second place car was the real toss-up. And so those are my 4 tied for second place cars. The S2000, the NSX, the Evo, the STI. Obviously, cars like the RX-7, the FD can also be thrown in there. The RX-8 even. I really like the RX-8, and if they weren't known for blowing up every 5 seconds, my next car would be an RX-8. I genuinely love those cars, and I've always wanted to try out a rotary, but the reliability is yikes. But that's Japan. I think that'd be my selections from Japan for my global market picks. We're going to move to Korea because obviously there's 3 really choices to really go from in Korea when it comes to sports cars. I mean, you have the Veloster N, you have the Genesis Coupe, and you have the Kia Stinger. And with the K5 trying to weasel his way in there, I don't know a lot about the K5. I know that they're trying to make the Optima a more sporty car, and obviously the K5 replaces that. So I mean, I think they're trying to make the K5 like a miniature Stinger, which I think is really cool. So I'm curious to see exactly how that goes when they release the K5 GT in a couple years. I'm sure that'll do amazing, and I want to see it succeed. So, but I don't know anything about it yet. So my list is really between the Stinger, the Genesis Coupe, and the Veloster N. And honestly, I think I'm going to pick the Veloster N. Now, people know me for being a hatch guy. I love my hatchbacks, and the Veloster N is just this incredible car. Again, with 2 very good transmission options with the manual and the DCT they just recently introduced here in the States that Europe and Japan had last year. But the DCT transmission and Hyundai's DCTs in particular are proving themselves more and more every day, and they're getting fantastic. So those transmissions are doing amazing, and I think that Hyundai is going in the right direction for sure, moving to DCTs. Majority of their cars, obviously, offering a manual still for those that need it. But I love DCT transmissions, for those who don't know. It's why I'm probably, more than likely, my next car replacing the Sport Track will be a GTI, because I love the DSG. I think Hyundai has done a great job with the DCT stuff, and I think the Veloster N is just a shoe-in as a victor. Of course, second place is a bit of a toss-up, but I think I'm going to have to go with the Stinger. The Stinger is just a modern Genesis Coupe with a bit more power, and is a bit, I don't want to say more fun, but because I've never ridden a Stinger. I've driven a Genesis Coupe. I've ridden in the Genesis Coupe. I can tell you that is a fun car, but I haven't ridden a Stinger yet, so I can't make a genuine kind of a declaration on that. But I think that I think just in terms of the availability of all the features and stuff like that the Stinger comes with, getting the 3.3 twin turbo engine is also great. I mean, it is a real competitor to the 3 Series. So I think honestly the Stinger is going to be my number 2 from Korea, with the Genesis Coupe being in 3rd. Obviously there's a ton of cars that Korea's made, like the Tiburon, the standard Veloster Turbo even. But the Genesis Coupe has always had a special place in my heart ever since I got to learn manual in one. So it takes 3rd. No questions asked. It's probably the only time I'm going to have a 3rd place car here, but I think when you only have 3 choices really for me from Korea, that's going to be my 3 picks. Let's move on to Europe. We're going to start off with the market that I'm most interested in when it comes to Germany, and we're going to talk about, Europe, which is Germany. I spend a lot of time researching Euro cars, and it's the majority of the time it is a German car that I'm into. I spend the most of my time, researching Volkswagens, BMWs, Audis, Porsches, stuff like that. All the big German boys, Mercedes-Benz as well. I don't forget to leave them out. But we're going to talk about my favorite cars from Europe. And first off, right away, my number 1 car from Europe is the Golf R. I think I've made this clear before. The Golf R is just this all-around perfect car. All-wheel drive with the DCT. And some places, it's very hard to find, but you can get a manual. I believe in the US, you can even get a Mark 7 in a manual. But it's really hard to find. All-wheel drive with the DCT, that fantastic blue color the R comes in, as well as just all the nice practicality that comes with the Golf in general. I think the Golf R is just this fantastic platform, and I think that Volkswagen hit it out of the park with that car. So the Mark 8R, they better live up to it. I mean, the Mark 8 GTI is a bit controversial. A lot of people don't like how it looks. I don't know. I hated it at first, but it's growing on me as time goes on. So I'll have to see when in person and really make my mind up then. But the Mark 7R in particular is a fantastic looking car, and it ticks every single box. And then we're going to move on to another car, my second placer from Europe, which is the E92 M3. Now, if you had asked me 3 years ago, E60 M5 would have been this choice, and it probably would have been number one. I loved that car. The problem is that once I learned a lot about the gremlins the E60 M5 has and how hard it is to modify them because of their gremlins, I kind of decided the E92 was my better choice. Plus, I'm more of a V8 guy than a V10 guy. I love the E92. I mean, it's just everything about it is perfect to me, and outside of the reliability, because it also struggles. But they're getting cheaper and cheaper by day. And honestly, if I had a bit more money to spend when the time comes to get a new car, because right now you guys normally looking in like the $7,000 to $8,000 range. If I could spend like 16 to 20, an E92 M3 would be in my considerations just for sure. I would be looking at E92 M3s. But I think as a whole, I mean, the A92 M3, while not perfect in terms of reliability, does offer everything else that I would want in an M car. I mean, it has the dual clutch transmission, it has a manual if I want to go that route. Granted, finding a coupe DCT car is nearly impossible, but I can find plenty of convertibles. It has the handling characteristics it needs. It has a fantastic sounding engine, it revs high, it moves out, and I think the E92 M3 would be a shoe-in from Germany. From Britain, I think my favorite British car has always been the early 2000s Aston Martin Vanquish. I don't know the exact years or any sort of generational codes, but I've always loved the original Vanquish. A lot of people are going to think that I'm crazy. I've always liked that car. Of course, another car would be the Jaguar F-Type R, which will be my second placer, because I've just always had a love for the Vanquish. I don't know why. I've always preferred Aston Martin as a company over Jaguar. But the the F-Type R is, of course, my favorite Jaguar, and is my second favorite British car. Of course, obviously the original Mini plays in, but of course Mini is owned by BMW now, which makes them practically German. So that will have to miss the list a little bit, even though I love the Mini. Italy, I think it's pretty much an easy decision. A lot of people know I'm not a supercar guy, but there's one supercar in particular that I absolutely adore, and that is the Pagani Zonda. The C12S 7.3 in particular. I love those cars to death. I've always, dreamed of owning one until I found out they weren't legal here. And the Zonda has always been just a special car to me, and I think that it would be a shoe-in car for me if I were going to buy an Italian supercar. I wouldn't buy a Lamborghini or Ferrari. I find them both just not really my taste. A lot of people are going to think I'm insane, but I just don't like exotics all that much unless it's something that's unique and kind of special. And that is obviously going to be the Zonda. And I think the only car I can really pick for second place here is the Abarth 500. I mean, a lot of people know how much I love those cars, and while I don't plan on buying one due to all of its quirks and reliability troubles that they have, I think that at the end of the day, I would pick the Zonda and the 500 for my two picks from Italy. Now we're going to move to the last country in Sweden that we get here in the States. The last country in Europe that we get here in the States, which is Sweden. And I have a lot of choices from pretty much only two manufacturers that are still around from Sweden. Obviously, we had Saab at one point, but I wasn't really enough into Saab to really pick any of their cars out as a favorite. I was more into Volvo and Koenigsegg. Obviously, Koenigsegg, again, is one of those supercar manufacturers that I don't know, I don't give them a lot of attention because supercars, again, aren't really my thing. I prefer more homegrown, kind of lower, I guess you could say lower end compared to supercars and hypercars, but still like on the higher end in terms of, under $100,000 cars, and unless you talk about the C7Z. But, from Sweden, it's a battle between the Volvo C30, which is, of course, for those who don't know, the car from Twilight, but is also the European Focus RS that we didn't get. It's pretty much that car, about the version we got in the States. And I like the C30, even though I think the back end is absolutely hideous. I think the front end is great, and I think that the C30 is a fantastic car, and I think that it gets slept on a lot because people don't realize how good that car actually is. I think the C30 and the V70R, which is a station wagon with the 5-cylinder, are my two top cars from Sweden. Obviously, the Koenigsegg stuff is also fantastic, and obviously cars like the Jesko, the Regera, the 1-to-1 will all be shoe-ins if I care enough about exotics. It's just something I don't care about. But that's my list. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you should really like to subscribe for more content videos on the channel. Obviously, this upcoming Friday, as long as everything goes to plan, I'll be bringing an update before track situation once I get more news. Or I'll be bringing you guys probably the most slept on automotive market in the world, the KDM stuff. And hopefully, the brother will be home so I can actually use this car in the background. Anyway, guys, hope you all enjoyed. Take care. Have a good rest of your week. I'll see you guys on Friday.